Hello everyone, this is Jack Frost with a short update for XRP. On the monthly chart, cycle wave 3 is expected to continue higher, currently within primary wave 3. Cycle wave 3 has a target calculated at 40.67, which is the 14.72 ratio between that and cycle wave 1. It is possible that it may end in March 2028, lasting a duration of a Fibonacci 8 years. Within cycle wave 3, primary wave 3 has a target calculated at 28.84, using the 14.72 ratio between that and primary wave 1. It is possible that it may end in November 2025, lasting a Fibonacci 3 years. Within primary wave 3, intermediate wave 3 is expected to continue upwards. And within primary wave 3, any second wave corrective movement cannot move below its start at 0.2794. A base channel is drawn around the primary degree movements within cycle wave 3 from the beginning of primary wave 1 to the end of primary wave 2, with a copy on the end of primary wave 1. As it continues higher, primary wave 3 is expected to break above the base channel. If that does eventually happen, with a full green candlestick above and not touching, it would support this wave count, seeing upwards movement to continue, particularly for these third waves at the larger degrees. At this point, price continues to hover around the lower edge of this base channel, though as is common for various cryptocurrencies, it is common for the third waves to start out slow, accelerate through the middle, and explode at the end. So this lack of range and momentum for the very short term is not cause for concern at this time frame. And this low at the end of intermediate wave 2 on the monthly chart. Is this low on the weekly chart? We can see more detail for the downwards movement labeled intermediate wave 2 and the upwards movement for the beginning of intermediate wave 3. A best fit channel is drawn around intermediate wave 2. Price currently finds resistance at the upper edge of the best fit channel. At this point, if there is a full green candlestick above and not touching the best fit channel, it would add confidence to this wave count, particularly for the short term, seeing the upwards movement to continue for intermediate wave 3. If price does break above that point, it may find support at the upper edge of the best fit channel before continuing away. Within intermediate wave 3, any second wave corrective movement cannot move below its start at 0.3838. And this low at the end of intermediate wave 2 on the weekly chart. Is this low here on the daily chart? We can see more detail for the upwards movement labeled the beginning of intermediate wave 3, currently expected to be within minute wave 3 of minor wave 1. Within minute wave 3, any second wave corrective movement cannot move below its start at 0.4322, meaning if minuet wave 2 just here wants to move any lower, it cannot move below this point. And within minuet wave 3 of minute wave 3, currently continuing upwards, subminuet wave 1 has found resistance at the upper edge of the best fit channel, copied over from the weekly chart, with price since declining for subminuet wave 2, now expected to continue upwards for overlapping third waves at minute, minuet, and subminuet degrees. If subminuet wave 2 does continue any lower, it cannot move below the start of subminuet wave 1 at 0.5030. As I have mentioned on the weekly chart, a full break above this best fit channel copied over from the weekly chart with a full green candlestick above and not touching would add confidence to this wave count, particularly at the daily time frame, seeing subminuet wave 2 to continue upwards. For the very short term, an additional high above 0.6648, the end of subminuet wave 1 just here, would add some short-term confidence to this wave count, seeing subminuet wave 3 to continue above the end of subminuet wave 1, meeting that core Elliott Wave rule. This wave count now expecting overlapping third waves at these 3 degrees, as previously mentioned, seeing complete first and second waves at minute, minuet, and subminuet degrees. This should eventually come with an increase in range and momentum, though as I have previously mentioned, at the beginning stages of these third waves, a lack of range and momentum is not cause for concern, as it is standard for them to start out slow and accelerate through the middle, though we do expect to see that acceleration, particularly for minute wave 3, at some point soon. On the technical weekly chart, price has overall consolidated after declining after this last high, breaking above resistance at 0.82 for the mid-term, consolidating within resistance at 0.675 and support at the lowest at 0.40, though overall it continues with support at 0.46. We can see a symmetrical triangle drawn here, with price just breaching the upper edge at this point here. We will want a full candlestick above and not touching to confirm an upwards breakout. Volume for the short term supports upwards movement with the strongest volume on these bullish candlesticks, though for the mid to long term, volume does support downwards movement with the strongest volume on the bearish candlesticks, and a push on the most recent completed candlestick. Having stronger volume than its neighboring bullish candlesticks gives a little bit of support for downwards movement for the short term, though at this point we do see volume to overall support upwards movement at this time frame. ADX declines, showing no clear trend. ATR is overall flat with a slight bullish slope as price consolidates for the short term, increasing for the very short term, giving a slight bullish outlook for volatility. And as ADX declines for XRP at this time frame, we use the model of stochastics and support and resistance, though while we do prefer the daily time frame for short-term price fluctuations, the model of stochastics and support and resistance at the weekly time frame suggests an upward swing may continue. towards resistance up at 0.82, where price finds that resistance point and stochastics may enter overbought, though it is also possible that stochastics may enter overbought at a sooner point where price finds resistance at 0.675 and the upward swing may end at that point soon. We will have to wait to see where stochastics is if price does increase towards resistance at 0.675. On the technical daily chart, we can see more detail for this symmetrical triangle just here with price breaking above, though it does continue back into the triangle at this point. Price for the very short term falling ever so slightly short of resistance at 0.675. Volume for the short term supports downwards movement with a push on these last two completed bearish candlesticks, particularly in relation to their neighboring bullish candlesticks. Though for the mid to long term at the daily time frame, volume does support upwards movement with the strongest volume on these bullish candlesticks. ADX now declines at the daily time frame as well, showing no clear trend. ATR has steeply declined, currently moving sideways with a slight bearish slope at the daily timeframe, giving a bearish outlook for volatility for the short term. And as ADX declines for XRP at the daily timeframe as well, we continue to use the model of stochastics and support and resistance, which at the daily timeframe suggests a downward swing may occur at this point, towards support at 0.46 or potentially down to 0.40, where price finds one of those support points while stochastics enters oversold. The recent upward swing may be complete where stochastics entered overbought and price found resistance at 0.62. That's all for me with your brief update for XRP. I hope everyone has a good week.